Hey,
Welcome, welcome, Richard. Welcome to Cade's Kaleidoscope, and welcome to Richard from over on the wild side. Richard's a YouTuber. The first question I have is, why do you live out in the backcountry?
well, mostly for freedom and stressing and living comfortably. But I should probably tell people that I currently live in a white canvas wall tent on my own property right next to a creek. And I'm out there with a bunch of animals. I got 8 horses and sheep and goats and dogs and chickens. And I've been living that way. Well, it's built up more and more over the past 4 years. And I mean, the benefits have just been unraveling the more I do it. The initial desire came from reading those books when I was a kid. Like a major one was the Laura Ingalls Wilder series. And but then in school, even before that, we'd always read cool books like My Side of the Mountain and Hatchet and stuff like that. So the desire was there from youth, and then finally later in my life, I just decided, you know what, I need to do this now.
Cool. Would you like to tell us about your channel over on the wild side?
Oh, sure. It's primarily about how I live. So some of the videos are about my lifestyle out there, making it work. I have to run irrigation to feed my horses, and then I do other things like trying to figure out how to preserve food, meat. So I dry meat over a fire or in the sun if it's warm enough. So I do videos about that kind of thing. But then I'm dressed weird because I'm on my way to a hunting trip this morning, and with other guys who do historical reenacting, and I do 1860s primarily, but civilian, not Civil War. This is far west. The guys I'm going with, they do fur trade era, which is the trappers, the mountain men. And so a lot of my videos are about that too when I get out, and hopefully I'll be getting out more now. Oh. Hey, boy.
We've got a guest who wants to say hi to the audience.
This is Flint.
Cool.
Yeah. My dog Sparta's sitting on Preston's lap.
Yeah.
She never cuddles with me, but she seems to like Preston.
Talk to us a little bit about the differences between being in town and being out in the country. I know you work sometimes in town and you visit town, but you like to live out in the country. I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, my life is still transitioning more and more. Like the goal that I'm working toward is pretty extreme. So right now I do come into town. I visit my parents fairly regularly, and I take showers there still, just because why not? When I was in South Africa, I saw how they bathed out of a container, just a small container. So I can do that, but it's so much more work when I don't have to. So I'm just kind of gradually easing into this life. But I don't work anymore. I let my real estate license go at the beginning of the year. And because like I said, the longer I live this way, the more that I see just how terrible society is. It's just full of stress and pressure and guilt and want and desire to keep everybody just working the system. And there's always this promise of comfort ahead that nobody ever reaches. People post like they've reached it, and maybe they do for a week on a vacation, but it usually takes a week to get over the stress when you go on vacation, and then you got to go back home. And so there's just, my eyes open more and more. Like, I mean, just seating alone. Shop for comfortable seating. First of all, your seating doesn't have to be comfortable, because why are you sitting around all the time? We're designed to move. We need to move to stay healthy. And so I sit on a 5-gallon bucket That bothers people. I could have comfortable seating, but just sometimes I like the simplicity and the I don't know, in your face kind of attitude towards society.
That's great.
That was good.
Yeah. So the in your face attitude towards society. When I was, I'm 30 today as we're recording this, and when I was 16, 17, I started reading the book Into the Wild.
Oh yeah.
By John Krakauer, which tells the story of Christopher McCandless, and that was a way for me to realize society is ill. Yeah. There's some serious illnesses in our society, and that was my introduction to this thirst to transcend, to escape, to rebel a little bit. And that's all to say, there's some sicknesses to society.
Actually, that reminds me, I remember some of your Facebook posts. You got pretty frustrated there for a while. Of course, you and I both also grew up religious.
Yeah.
So that adds another compound of frustration, how things are running.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And so you took off on your bicycle.
Yeah.
Which was an awesome solution.
Yeah.
Always respected that.
Yeah. Today, I still practice my religion, but in a very, very liberal way.
Yeah.
So liberal that some Christians hear the way I believe, and they say, "Oh, Preston's not even a believer. He's not a true Christian." But
well, then you're doing something right.
Yeah. If you want to, you can talk to us about your reasons for leaving society, or at least starting to to live apart a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. I read that book too, Into the Wild. And when I read it, I was actually living in South Africa. And so where I was in South Africa, it was fairly developed. Like we had power, but the buildings were mostly mud houses where they build mud bricks and then cover it with kind of like a stucco of mud. We lived in block houses, so that was a little bit of an improvement. We had flushing toilets, but I had to walk 100 yards to them, which was too much for the other white people. They all lived down in this certain area, and I lived up the hill and at the end with all the blacks. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So I was reading that book, and I'm like, man, why am I not doing that? Because that's what I'd always wanted to do.
Yeah. Talk to us a bit about South Africa. What were you up to there?
That was crazy. I was still very religious at that time. So some guy in my church, Mars Hill in Seattle, he started an orphanage there because he grew up there. So he started an AIDS orphanage where we could take single women and have them take care of kids that were orphans, which sounds all great, but man, it's eye-opening when you actually go and see how things are done. But otherwise, South Africa is amazing. Africa, as I can tell, is just amazing. There's something called the rhythm of Africa. You just go there and you feel it if you're in tune to it. It was incredibly beautiful. Where I was, you can actually get snow. So it's not hot like most people think. It was cold. And South Africa has been incredibly developed by white people. And so it wasn't like people living off of hunting or anything. But it was a much more simple way of life. And then when I got back to the United States, I intended to try it. But man, the powers to suck you back in, they were strong to me. So I got sucked back in. And then it took a few years before I figured that out and left.
How long has it been since you saw The Matrix?
I need to re-see it. I keep saying I'm going to rewatch it, but I think I haven't seen it since a couple years after it came out.
Yeah. Flawless. It's a documentary.
Yeah, totally.
The Matrix movie is a documentary.
Yeah.
And I find myself really, I love society so much that I'm here in society most of the time. Although I was recently, I was in Argentina in the backcountry for 6 months.
Okay.
And that's a point where you and I differ a little bit, at least. I do enjoy sleeping in town, and it's very convenient to be able to charge my phone while I'm asleep. Those kind of things.
I do that.
Oh, okay.
I have a queen size bed with 2 feather comforters.
All right. And you got solar power?
I've got solar power.
Yeah.
I keep my battery right by my bed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm way more comfortable out there than I was in town.
Yeah.
But
talk to us about your house.
So I just recently moved into the wall tent. Before that, I was in my my horse trailer, where the front half is converted to living with counters and stuff. And I deal with a lot of wind, so that horse trailer is really convenient for that. But
you can keep talking.
Wood heat is my favorite. When I lived in town, I had a really cool old craftsman house, and it was tough to keep it warm. And if I did keep it warm, it was expensive. And but even then, it was never consistent heat. But my goodness, living like this, I keep a wood stove going, and most of the winter I keep the door wide open at my other property that you've been to. I'm able to look over the entire valley. And I mean, to get that kind of thing, you got to pay tons of money, and you got to work hard, and you can't even enjoy it. I sit around out there, read books, and just enjoy my fire.
Yeah.
So when people always say, well, I don't want to give up my comforts, it's like, well, you don't have to. If you want to, you can, but I don't.
So, you wanted to hear about how I was living. I was in the backcountry of the foothills of the Andes in Cordoba State, Argentina.
Wait, you don't call it Argentina?
Well, the correct way of saying is Argentina.
Okay.
In Spanish. Yeah.
Senor Chama really drilled that into us.
Argentina. Yeah. And I was living in a rainbow community, a permanent community started by the Rainbow Gathering. With the Rainbow Gathering is a fractal of Woodstock.
Oh.
Started here in the United States, and today it's a strong movement happening worldwide. Very, very strong movement in Argentina. And right before the quarantine of COVID-19 started, I was backpacking, just being a traveler in South America, working while traveling. And that's what I was doing. And in February of 2020, I needed to leave Brazil because my 3 months were up. You get a 3-month visa being from the United States. And so I just looked on a map and thought, okay, I'm close to Paraguay and Argentina. So I read about traveling to Paraguay, and I figured out it's pretty complicated as a U.S. citizen to get a tourist visa to be there. Whereas Argentina is pretty easy. They just automatically give us 3 months.
Yeah, okay.
So for that reason, I crossed the border to Argentina, and I saw on social media that there's some of the friends I met in previous rainbow gatherings. They were going to another gathering that was happening at that moment in February 2020 in Cordoba State.
So how long do these gatherings last?
They last a moon cycle, 1 month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do? You just sleep on the dirt then?
Yeah, you camp, you make music, you make love, food, vegan food. It's Woodstock.
Huh.
But it's
pretty rough camping conditions.
Yeah, you're in the backcountry. The only way to access rainbow gatherings generally is by hiking. And so we all hiked 3 miles through over some mountains to reach this campsite.
Oh, okay.
And it's a homestead where we were. There were some there were some dilapidated buildings that we were able to
Wow.
live in and rebuild.
What kind? Not like the old European plantation houses that you find.
No, these were
My dog's messing around.
okay. These were adobes.
Oh, really? Okay. So were you in the jungle or?
No, these are dry hills, very similar to the hills around Yakima.
Oh, okay.
It's a dry hills. We had an ojo de agua as on the property we were living on. Now, something I'll explain to viewers and listeners. This is I'm talking about rainbow gatherings, but within the rainbow movement, there are gatherings that last a month. It's just a festival, a free festival. And you also have permanent rainbow communities. And I arrived for a gathering.
Okay.
I arrived to this place for a gathering, and that was a festival, and that was 1 month. But I stayed because this is also a permanent community.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh. Cool.
And I got quarantined there. It was a perfect place to be quarantined because
Wow.
I had access to rivers and mountains and endless hiking and north, south, east, and west. Volcano close by. Hiked to the summit of a volcano 3 times, and the closest tiny town to this rainbow community, it was 15 kilometers, which is about 9 miles, through either a dirt road or the backcountry. So I became a better athlete. I was already an athlete, but when I arrived, but I became a better athlete. I became a better runner.
Wow.
Because the only escape from this commune. Now I love living on the commune, but you can get tired of living with the same 6 people for months at a time. So as a way for me to connect to Wi-Fi and to buy chocolate and all kinds of stuff, I would jog 9 miles, run, walk, and jog 9 miles, sometimes on a dirt road, sometimes through trails of the backcountry. And I used a compass, good old combination of compass and map.
Yeah.
Sometimes my GPS on my phone worked, and I was able to navigate over rivers and valleys, sometimes on a trail, sometimes without a trail, all the way to town. Got my Wi-Fi fix, called my crush in Brazil. And so that was a bit about my last stint where I stayed 6 months in the backcountry.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's way more extreme than what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I didn't mention, I built a small house. I built a teepee, and I lived all winter in the Argentinian winter in Cordoba. Yeah, the coldest we got was in Fahrenheit 29 degrees Fahrenheit, and Celsius, that's about 0, -1, -2 degrees.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, and dry. Thankfully, it was a dry cold, so no rain. There's a microclimate in the state of Córdoba, Argentina, which is unique. Es único entre todo el mundo y es único en América Latina. Es un microclima muy agradable. Córdoba has a microclimate that makes it the winters are easy because it's dry.
But that's unique.
Yeah, it's unique inside. Yeah, amongst South America, it's unique, and in the world, it's a unique little microclimate. Yeah, so I built my house. I used permaculture principles, and I used indications and guides from my friends who had done the same thing, and I had a lot of help from my friends. All I did was I searched out 8 straight-ish tree branches,
Yeah.
and aligned those to make the frame of a teepee.
Yeah.
And then between each branch, I put other branches to make a support. And then on top of the frame, I put 2 layers of palm leaves
Okay.
on top, and the palm leaves, overlaid one over another to create a semi waterproof structure. I learned after 2 layers of palm leaves to make a waterproof permaculture house without any plastic or metal. It takes hours and hours of work.
I bet.
Yeah. So after 2 layers and a lot of cuts on my hands, these palm leaves are pointy. They're very sharp.
Oh.
So I was cutting my hands and tired of the manual labor. So I rode a friend's bicycle. A Chilean woman let me borrow her bicycle. I rode her bicycle 50 miles in one day, 25 miles to Salsacate, the small town, and I bought plastic. I bought a tarp. Big old sheet of tarp, and I rode it back 25 miles. So in one day did 50 miles on the bicycle just to have enough plastic to waterproof and windproof my house, my teepee.
Wow. So after that, it worked out pretty well?
Yeah. I was comfortable. I had a fire inside. I slept naked because I was so warm.
Yeah.
Even in the coldest parts
Teepees
of the
are amazing.
Yeah. Great technology. Ancient technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk to us about your experiences in teepees?
I haven't had much. I have a teepee, but I had it set up in Oregon, and I think the best summation of my impression of a teepee is when I had just a small fire, about that big,
Yeah.
and sitting in my t-shirt, maybe shorts, I don't remember, and the dogs were barking at something, so I went outside, and turned out there was a blizzard going on. Snow was falling sideways, and I had no idea. I was sitting in there so cozy. I had no idea that the wind was blowing, the snow was falling. They're incredible. It's like the wind kind of makes them more stable, if anything. And then the way that compared to my wall tent, I have to keep the door closed or else the whole thing's cold, except right next to the wood stove. But in a teepee, I can sit with the door open and a small fire, and it just circulates the heat. They're phenomenal.
Yeah.
But something I wanted to touch on. So what I discovered when I used to live in my house, I'd watch my patterns of life, and I had my chair that I sat in. I don't eat at a table. I just sit with my plate in my lap, and I sit with my laptop in my lap. And so I did, 90% of being awake at home was in my chair. And then my sleeping was all done, obviously, in my bed. And then a little bit of time was done in my kitchen, which I always use the same burner. Everybody always has their favorite burner. And sometimes I use the oven. And I'd use the sink, obviously, and a fridge. So I'd watch these patterns of life, and I'd realize all of that could fit into about a 10 by 12 space. You don't have to have a whole living room, because I'd walk, I lived in a decent sized house, and I'd just walk to get to my kitchen. Oh, and my bathroom, I forgot to say that. If my bed was right beside my chair, how would that ruin my life? And if my oven was right in front of my chair, does that mean I'm oppressed or I'm suffering? I could have fit it all in one room, any one of the rooms in my house. I could have lived in, had it been designed that way. And so that's why when I think about living out, you've been living the life that I want to live. I've told you that before. It's my animals that keep me bound. My commitment to my animals. But I've taken basically that lifestyle that I had in home and just kind of gotten rid of all the excess. So that's why, to me, living out there is still, it's comfortable and it's easier, because I still have a comfortable bed. I still have a comfortable chair if I want one. I have Wi-Fi, so
Nice.
that makes my life way easier than
Yeah.
what you went through.
Yeah.
I mean, I got my phone. I'm on it way too much. And, anytime I want to Google something, I just do it.
Oh yeah.
So, I don't know. That's just some differences in how we've lived.
Yeah.
What kind of bed did you sleep? Okay, because last year, my channel's called Over on the Wild Side. That's because I watch my dogs, and I'm like, how can I bring out that animal life in me? And one of the draws was to actually live outside, like my dogs do, by choice. My dogs can come in anytime they want. They prefer to live outside. And so last year I camped out for 2 months. I had just a tarp tent, which eventually I just reduced that to just a tarp on the ground. And but what I found, I didn't feel rested. I felt the way that I did when I had a graveyard job, and I can't sleep during the day, so I was always tired, and that's a miserable feeling after a while. And after 2 months, that's kind of how I started to feel. I felt sleep deprived, and that's when I finally decided to just move back into my horse trailer where I had my comfortable bed. And then I started feeling well rested.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's important to be healthy, and sleep is a major component of that. So that is why I'm curious what your bed was like, and how did you rest? How did you sleep?
Yeah, well, when I arrived at this rainbow gathering, I was just there for the festival, and I was camping in my solo tent. I've traveled with the same one-person North Face little 3-season tent. You know, it's a tent designed to be camped in during autumn, between spring, summer, and autumn.
Yeah.
And I slept because it was late summer when I arrived at this gathering, and so I just slept comfortably in my tent.
But what kind of bed did you have?
Yeah, I started with just my sleeping bag and on the ground, because I didn't have even a mat with me, a sleeping mat. But then as the quarantine started, and I looked around and realized I'm gonna be staying here for months at least, and the winter's approaching, that's when I really put my batteries in. There's a phrase in Spanish, ponerte las pilas. Ahí yo puse mis pilas y yo empecé a construir mi casa. So that's when I really put the batteries in. I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm going to spend winter here. I'm going to build myself a house.
That's an ancient saying.
Yeah.
On there.
Yeah, is it? Yep.
About batteries.
Yep. And I started sleeping on a mat. Well, at some point I was gifted a mattress, a twin-size mattress.
Oh, legit mattress. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All I had to do was carry it 3 miles over the mountains to use it.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
But hey, it's worth it. So were you feeling sleep deprived, by the way?
Oh no, I was sleeping well.
So you can sleep comfortably on.
Oh yeah, I love camping, and I stealth camp to this day. You know,
Okay, so this is where I'm going. That what is it about modern society comforts that you need? Then it's not the sleeping. Then
no, I can sleep anywhere.
I envy that.
Interaction with people and dancing, those are two prominent parts of society that I just love. I love people. I'm an extrovert, and I'm a dancer.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so it's more really the socializing.
oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in Argentina, I had a lot of socializing during the first month in this rainbow gathering, because there were 50 people camping together. Whereas once the gathering ended, a lot of people started to leave, and that was when we went from being a group of 50 people to being 20, to being 15, to 12, to 10, and then 6. And that's where I became Randy, I became Randy because I was horny.
Yeah.
Tired of sleeping alone and tired of being alone. So that's when I eventually, after 6 months of being on the commune, I made the decision to obtain a permission slip. I needed to get permission from the government to travel because we were in quarantine.
Yeah.
A local mayor helped me out, and he got me the authorization to travel 100 miles, or 160 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
And I traveled from this rainbow commune close to Salzacate, cerca de Salzacate in Córdoba, Argentina, y me fui hasta Capilla del Monte. And I went from this tiny town called Salzacate, the closest town to the rainbow commune. I went from Salzacate to Capilla del Monte, which means the chapel of the mountain.
Oh, okay.
And there in Capilla del Monte, after my second or third day there, I met somebody and fell in love.
Oh. What happened to the girl in Brazil?
Well, people change. She told me the feeling was not mutual.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unrequited love.
Yeah. I don't know what that's like.
Lucky you.
It's funny. I'm an extrovert also.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, in some ways, I love being around people, and I get energy from being around people.
Mm-hmm.
And so does this dog.
Yeah.
And so that is a challenge, being alone, for sure. But like the socializing you're talking about, I've never seen that in America anyway. Like, we hardly have much social culture. You've seen the dance scene that we had here. That was kind of unique, and even that was not great. You know, so I mean, it seems like what you're talking about, somebody would have to travel to other countries. Like South Americans, I've always loved what I've seen about Hispanic lifestyle, you know, mostly Mexican here.
Yeah.
I've always envied their culture, that they had more culture.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about that? Do you find that here in America? Or are you going to go back down to South America?
I do dance here in the United States, and I enjoy. I was recently in Spokane, and in my 2 weeks in Spokane, I was four nights of those 2 weeks I was out dancing at a gay bar and a straight bar, you know. The gay scene, okay. That's probably. Yeah, the gay scene, even if you're straight, the gay scene is the gay bars are great places to hang out, because there's something unique in a culture that's really there for each other, and it means a lot in a place, anywhere, I think, but in a place like Spokane or Yakima. You go to a gay bar in Spokane or Yakima, and you have this feeling of camaraderie, because you've all been bullied.
Mm-hmm.
You've all been maybe on the margins of society. Plenty of us in a gay bar, or the people in a gay bar, have been singled out, or have had a hard time because their parents don't approve of their lifestyle. So I do find community that means a lot to me in Yakima and in Spokane, and in the dance scene in Yakima is great. I enjoy doing the swing dancing that there is here.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was
You're
thinking.
Not making love.
No.
I mean, what I hear you talking about South America is more like, you know.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. It's not the same there.
No. And that's why here in Yakima, you could find free love if you went to an ecstatic dance.
I'm not talking about free love. I'm just talking about more of that just fun community to be around, where there's dancing, there's hanging out, there's you know, just kind of a fun lifestyle that is hard to find here in the United States. I mean, sure, you can go out and find it on a night.
Yeah.
but it's not like a lifestyle, because those same people then the next day they're stressed out.
Yeah.
And
That's a good question. A lot of Argentinians choose to work 20, 30 hours a week max. And they do that because they prefer to have their time to themselves,
yeah, exactly.
have plenty of free time. I was in a relationship with an amazing woman. I'll call her C. And she's an entrepreneur. She teaches English.
Oh, huh.
And she and I started a school.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah. So there are some people in Yakima and in the United States who have escaped the Matrix to an extent.
There's a few.
Yeah.
They're hard to find.
Yeah. Well, just last night I was playing board games and somebody said, I've got to work in the morning. Bye-bye. And they had left at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I feel bad for you. Although, I got up early this morning to ride my bike here to my parents' house so we could be on at 8 o'clock. This isn't work. This is what I would be doing.
No, this is fun.
This is what I would be doing if I wasn't podcasting. So. We're both. You're raised in Yakima?
Raised here, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're both. I was raised here from age 10 on. Richard, you were raised here from about what age?
I think I was 4 when we got here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we know what it's like in small town America. Yakima is technically a small city.
Yeah, it's for Eastern Washington. It's on the larger side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a church on every corner. We both have different stories of being raised in Protestant evangelical Christian churches here in the Yakima area, and I had all good experiences. You want to talk to us a little bit about your experience being raised Christian? And again, we can go anywhere with this podcast.
Sure. Hey, man, anything you're interested in, I'm an open book.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty hardcore Christian even as a kid from kindergarten. And then I really, always trying to bring my friends to church events and stuff, and always trying to be what a Christian as a kid is, not cussing and that kind of thing. And then as I got older, I got more interested in reading the Bible and stuff. But then I moved to Seattle to be a part of a church. And, I was just hardcore. I'm intense in whatever I do. But I never did things that really rubbed me the wrong way. So finally I went to South Africa. And while I was there, I knew that if I left South Africa, I was not going back to Seattle. And then South Africa only lasted a year, so I came back to Yakima. And then I was still pretty hardcore Christian until 2011, when I went to school, when you and I were in choir.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started to realize that maybe the culture that is being created isn't that great. I had always dealt with depression and inferiority and really dark side to me, and loneliness. And the way the church treated me was basically, hey, as long as you're tithing and coming to church, you're fine. I'm like, I'm not fine. But they didn't, not only did they not even care, they didn't even have the means to recognize it, nor did they have the means to help it. Like, I'd reach out for help. I've talked to a lot of Christian counselors and pastors, and I'm an open book. I just spilled it out. They had nothing to say. So finally I found this organization that was actually a for-profit organization that the churches all criticized. And And yet they were actually, from there I was able to get some serious positive life change. And ever since then, it's been, it's funny, you can't say uphill or downhill. Ever since then, it's been an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
My life's been getting better and better. And so that has really been eye-opening, how the church functions well if you're a functioning person. Like if you come from a good, positive home and you're a positive, hard worker, or successful worker, I should say. You don't have to be a hard worker. You just have to be successful. Then you'll probably go up the ladder and do well in church. But if you are struggling, they just, in my opinion, they don't know what to do with you. And that's what the Bible is all about, is how to heal people and how to grow in peace and life. And so that's when I started to realize that that culture isn't really healthy. And then, you know, once you start realizing that, then you start looking around at society. Society's not healthy. Well, I mean, I guess I was looking at that anyway. And so, yeah, my answer is leave it all.
Yeah. That's great. I try to be open-minded and maintain a respect for people of different religions and cultures, and I find myself really connecting with one spiritual practice from Hinduism, which is singing the Hanuman Chalisa. And that's a song, it's a hymn of devotion to the monkey Hanuman. And Hanuman is in the Hinduism means the religions of India. And I have an episode of this podcast where I talk specifically about who is Hanuman or Hanumana, and you can check that out. The episode is called Who is Hanumana?
I'll put it in the description.
Yep, that'll be in the description. I had another question for you, Richard. Well, I see you're using irrigation. So what kind of crops are you growing? And you had said this is for your animals, that you were growing crops?
Yeah, so I'm raising pasture for my horses. So it started that I was going to cut hay, but the more that I looked at it and the more that I learn, when the pioneers originally came to Yakima, they didn't use hay initially, and then they had the horrible winter of 1861, which killed off a lot of their cattle and animals, and then they started putting up hay. But the thing about Yakima is we typically have pretty mild winters. The elk survive them, the wild horses on the reservation survive them, so why can't our domestic horses survive them? I mean, yeah, there is different food quantities that they're used to consider. But my point is, instead of cutting hay, I can let my grass grow really tall, and they can eat pasture. Last year I had them on it for 10 months of the year, because up through December, we were still getting temperatures in the 40s, and grass can grow at, I think, over 40 degrees. So what I'm doing is pasture. Initially, I started to turn it into a monocrop where I disked and planted for grass, because I thought that was the thing to do. And then this year, had a whole crop of weeds come up, which made me nervous at first. But then I started looking at the weeds. There's some that I need to get rid of that aren't good, but there's a ton of them that are edible. And now that I have goats and sheep, well, and even my horses, I find they all like a variety. So I don't think that they necessarily need to eat only grass. I think that variety can be nice, and certainly nice for me. I've got fresh vegetables all summer. Because I'm irrigating them, they don't dry out. They just keep growing up new ones. So that's been awesome to see. that I got a huge food source. I don't even have to garden.
Cool. There is something magical about living off the land, isn't it? Directly off the land. And that's something I was able to do. About 30% of my diet for the 6 months I was in the backcountry of Argentina, about 30% of my diet came from our own garden and food that we picked from. We picked a lot of figs from and also peaches and apricots, because figs, peaches, and apricots all grow wild in this part of Cordoba, Argentina. But you want to talk to us a bit about living off the land, about the food you can that for human consumption that you can eat from the land?
I can, but honestly, it sounds like you've done a lot more of it than I have. My goodness. The things I hear you say, I'm like, why in the world are you up here? So, I mean, I just pick some greens. I've got things like plantain, lamb's quarter, dandelion leaves. There's a few others, maybe 6 or 8 that are very plentiful and pretty easy. And it is really gratifying. It's a really amazing feeling to be able to know that right here I've got food. It doesn't produce garbage. It's growing excessively, so it doesn't harm anything to be picking it. It's not a monocrop. It's not getting sprayed, so I'm not destroying anything or supporting harmful industries. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of that just culminates in good feeling. And it's funny because in this marketing, you get all these superfoods that become popular. And, it's marketing so that now all of a sudden everybody's buying romaine. And now romaine's not good enough. And now everybody's buying kale. And then you look up these plants that are growing as weeds. They're considered weeds. And you read about the vitamins, and they're all superfoods, to use that term. And then you start to realize, oh, okay, so the food industry is all about marketing and gimmicks so that they can sell this landfill garbage that has some monocrop food in it. Mm-hmm. That even if it's organic, I mean, that's not as healthy as things growing wild. Mm-hmm. Not as healthy to the environment. And so that's kind of been my eye-opening thing, and why I'm standing behind it. But I'll be honest, even when I lived in town, it was a chore to eat vegetables. I like meat, and so even out there, it's still a chore to eat the vegetables. Yeah. But it's satisfying and healthy.
Yeah, on the subject of edible plants you can forage here in the Yakima area, and also in Cordoba, Argentina, there's a nettle. In Spanish, the word is ortiga. Mm-hmm. And it's a nettle, so it stings your hand a little bit when you touch it, but there's a way to harvest it without hurting yourself. Yeah. And I just noticed it was growing here in the Yakima River. I was out for a day hike 3 days ago in the Yakima River Canyon. Is it called Umtanum Creek with the bridge crossing the river? Yeah. Yeah, the old railroad bridge. So I was there with a friend. We visited a spring where.
Did you get up to the waterfall?
We didn't make it that far. Okay. We missed the waterfall, but made it up to a little spring, and I noticed an abundant amount of nettle or ortiga growing. So if you're hiking or living in the backcountry in the Yakima area and also in Argentina, you can find this. It's the English word. I'm going to look for it right now. Getting on the Goog.
It's stinging nettle, isn't it?
Maybe that's what it is, stinging nettle.
Yeah, that's what we've got around here.
And it's edible?
Yeah.
Yeah, you cook it?
Incredible.
Yeah. It can help if you're diabetic. It can help you because it's a natural way of lowering your blood sugar.
Okay.
And it's super healthy. I drank it in tea. I ate it in salad. Just have to cook it a little bit, and it's
yeah. I had a little bit of that this spring, and it was like somebody told me that somebody on the west side loves it. It grows very plentifully on the west side.
Mm-hmm.
Over here, I haven't found it in abundance, so I'm going to have to check that place you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it gives you a vitamin rush.
Oh, yeah.
It's power packed, and that's what food is supposed to do. It's supposed to give you energy, but a lot of times you eat food and it weighs you down. But
Yep.
yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, I'm looking on this just what from the rockfallfoundation.org explains the leaves of stinging nettle are edible at any stage of the plant's growth. Cooking or drying. That's something we did in Argentina. Was we dried them and mixed them with salt for a really tasty salt. Yeah, nice and tender earlier in the season when they're young, and if they have already grown flowers and seeds, they're still perfectly edible. Just pick the smaller leaves near the top, and that it grows like a weed. It's a great way to help your salad. Here in Washington State, I know we also have oxalis. Did you ever eat oxalis on the west side?
No.
It looks similar to a 3 or 4 leaf clover.
Oh.
I've got to give this a Google right now just to check my oxalis.
I have a lot of red clover, and I thought oxalis was something that is in greens, but I didn't know about the actual plant called oxalis.
Oxalis plant.
Oh, shit. I gotta take a leak.
Okay.
None of these trees are.
We can go inside. We can go inside at any point. I'll just quickly say this. Yep. So oxalis, Oxalis, oregana, and here's the source of this information is the Washington Native Plant Society.
Oh.
WNPS.org. So this plant grows west of the Cascades in Washington State at the coast, and the height. This plant grows up to 8 inches or 20 centimeters, and the flowers are single white to pale pinkish, sometimes with reddish veins. The flowers grow on scapes, which are stems directly grown from roots, and the petals are the tasty part of this plant. It's delicious. It's like green apple candy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the petals, this is abundant on the west side.
And it looks like what we sell around St. Patrick's time as shamrock.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so you can make yourself a tea. You can add I just ate this raw, and it was like candy.
Wow. What about, are the roots okay? And is it native?
Good question.
I'm going to click on it here and see. It probably is on the west side. Something's got to be native over there.
Oh, yeah, it says native here. Mm-hmm. That works. Cool. Huh. Nice. Yeah, see? That stuff's all over. We walk on that stuff, and it's healthier, and it's cheaper, and it doesn't produce garbage. Anybody could get it if they had time, if they weren't going to work and supporting the industries. Yep.
Or what do you want to talk about next?
Well, holistic health, sobriety, and travel. Mm-hmm. You take sobriety to a higher level than most. Like my experience with AA is a whole lot of smoking and caffeine. But we were talking about this earlier. I don't feel like you were like a full-on addict. If we can talk about this stuff.
I like talking about this, and my journey with substances is I had a rock bottom experience in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Where I spent two weeks living on the streets. I was homeless for 2 weeks in Mexico, and that was my rock bottom. That was the experience that, like, I woke up in a jail cell. I had I had my feet were being eaten by ants in the jail cell.
Wow.
And I looked at my life. I was barefoot, and the only item of clothing I had on was a pair of underwear. And well, somebody had gifted me a shirt by this point in the jail cell.
Okay.
And
But you don't remember getting the shirt.
I kind of remember getting the shirt. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was given the shirt from another person in the jail cell who happened to have two when he was led into the jail cell.
Wow.
And that was my rock bottom, was waking up in the jail cell. My feet are being chewed on by ants. And I looked at I had been beat up in my sleep.
Oh, gosh.
I had some bruises and scratches on my face because somebody had beat me up while I was asleep.
Do you think it was guards when they took you in, or do you think it was other cellmates?
Personally, what I think happened was it was I think it was a cellmate who had a grudge against me because this is how dumb I was, and I didn't put two and two together. I was in Mexico, and I was in jail, and somebody had said to me, "Those two guys over there, you don't mess with them." And that was the subtle way of saying those two guys belong to a powerful cartel or a narco group.
Yeah.
And I said aloud to a guard in their earshot, "Please don't put me near those two."
Oh.
And that was, I think I had accidentally made an enemy of a cartel.
Well, maybe you outed them in a way. Maybe they saw that you were notifying. Oh, okay. Something.
Yeah, something happened. Ooh. And I woke up the next morning with some cuts on my face, and my dad came to visit me. Well, he came to rescue me and get me back on my pharmaceutical medications. And when he saw my face, he said, "What happened to your face?" I said, "Bug bites." Just so he didn't worry.
Yeah.
But
I remember that time because that's when you came back home and you came and helped me out with some stuff that I paid you for.
Yeah.
And I did talk to your parents. They were worried about you for sure.
Yeah. I've got the best parents. I'm really fortunate that they have stuck with me and taken care of me through the highs and lows. I was diagnosed as bipolar when I was 20, and I was a false diagnosis, but at the same time I recognize that I do sometimes need to take medications in order to sleep. If I don't,
are you on those meds now?
Yeah. I took risperidone last night.
Okay.
Risperidone is an antipsychotic or a tranquilizer med.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, if I'm unmedicated, it depends on the season of the year. Different seasons of the year have affect me differently. But I'm in a hypomanic state right now as we're recording this. So because I'm taking my meds, I was able to sleep 7-8 hours last night.
Nice, okay.
Yeah. If I were unmedicated right now, I would probably sleep maximum 1 to 2 hours a night.
When you'd be dancing downtown.
And I'd be dancing downtown without any clothes on.
Yeah.
For some reason, there's some logic in the mind of the bipolar or schizophrenic person. There's some logic. There's a logical reason for us. It's logical to dance naked on the train tracks or in the busy streets, because that's what I did in Mexico. That's one of the reasons I was taken to jail in Mexico. I was dancing naked in traffic.
Well, sometimes I think you're not the problem. It's society is the problem.
Yeah, there are some real illnesses with, if you take a society and you take a cross-section of society and you have at least 80% of the population working a job they don't like, then who's ill here? The schizophrenic person or society.
Yeah. Yeah, they just want you to go home and sleep and then go to work.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the diagnosis. This guy's not sleeping and working. He's wrong. Why is he having fun?
Yeah. And I'll take a moment here to go into some more depth about the well, I've been institutionalized twice. And one of those, the first time was here in Yakima in the United States. I was taken to One North. It was called One North at the time, and Memorial Hospital's psychiatric unit.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it still called Memorial Hospital?
No, they changed it.
Yeah.
To us locals, it's always Memorial.
Yeah.
But isn't One North, that's the youth facility?
Well, when I was there, it was a psychiatric facility for all ages.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think the youngest there was 18, and the oldest was 60, 70.
Oh. Okay. That may still be the case. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I think I knew somebody that was there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was institutionalized twice, and both times it was against my will.
Oh.
And my life improved vastly after my stay at Memorial, and after both times of being institutionalized, my life improved. So I think both times it happened, it needed to happen.
Wow. Okay.
I needed to get kicked in the butt, you know?
Yeah.
And it was 10 days that I was in Memorial, and I was taught holistic approaches to my mental health, but I was also medicated, like heavily medicated.
Yeah.
Tranquilizers.
How long ago was the most recent time?
It was December of 2017 that I was last institutionalized in Mexico. It was in Mexico.
Oh.
And it was just in the jail, just in the drunk tank. In Mexico, they call it a torito. In Yucatan, Mexico, they call it a torito, like the bowl, like the pen for the drunk people. And that's where I was institutionalized the second time. And the Mexican cops did a really good job with me. They took good care of me.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was put in the drunk tank for 24 hours and then released. And then two days later, they picked me up again because I was disturbing the public and a danger to myself.
Yeah, okay.
And the second time that they had me in the jail cell, they told me that we're not going to release you until you're in the hands of your parents or family, somebody who can get you back on your meds, basically.
So that's why your dad went down.
Yeah.
Well, but that's also when you're institutionalized?
Yeah. I mean, when I say institutionalized, I just mean put in the jail cell until my dad came down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a psychiatric ward.
No, this was not a psychiatric ward. It was just the jail cell.
But they gave you some holistic approaches there?
In jail, no. In jail there was a 12-step meeting. There was an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting that came to the jail cell, and I remember they hosted a whole meeting for us from the other side of the bars.
Wow.
They just, and it made sense. It was a great way of doing it. They spoke to us in English and Spanish. It was all done in Spanish, but there was another gringo, a former alcoholic or a alcoholic who was hosting the meeting.
He was interpreting.
And he spoke to me he spoke just a few phrases directly to me in English. I remember the last thing he said before he left the meeting was, just walk in a straight line, buddy, and you'll get out of here. Just walk in a straight line. Yeah.
Did you have meds in the jail?
Nope. Because I entered the jail cell with just the pair of underwear and the shirt that was gifted to me and no shoes. And by that point in Mexico, I had lost all my possessions.
Yeah. What I meant was they didn't give you any
No, not that I'm aware of in the jail cell. They didn't. There was a point where I believe I was drugged against my will in the jail cell, but I think it was a street drug, honestly, because I drank water, and then shortly after drinking a cup of water, I was face down with my head on the floor, close to the hole that we used to go to the bathroom in.
Oh gosh.
So not a pleasant place to be lying down. And I was aware it was like sleep paralysis. I was aware that I was face down with my face right next to a bathroom, but I was unable to move my body or do anything to get out. And that lasted for, it must have been 15 minutes. And in that moment, I actually had a psychedelic vision. I was visited by the evergreen goddess, this being, this interdimensional goddess. And I know I sound crazy when I say this, but I'm okay with that. And the evergreen goddess was dressed and beautiful. There were kaleidoscopic patterns emanating from behind her. Her aura was beautiful. And she spoke to me something simple. She said, every event in your life has been pre-planned by you. And you'll be able to, and everybody that comes into your life is here to teach you something. And waking up from that in the jail cell, I was like, okay. I'm going to get out of here. And that was how I managed to, that was a glimmer of hope in the jail cell. And a few days later, my dad came and picked me up.
Wow.
And I didn't even have to wait in the jail cell to be picked up by my dad, because a foundation this is the city of Mérida in Yucatan, Mexico.
Okay.
And a woman named Kim, she runs a foundation there.
The name of her foundation is YGO Outreach, and the link is in the description. She paid for a motel room for me, and I stayed 2 nights, 3 days in a motel waiting for my dad to pick me up, and he did. And her foundation paid for the motel and food and all that.
They do a lot of good for the people, boys and girls, and people of all ages in the city of Mérida, Mexico.
And for us English speakers only, are you saying Merida?
Yeah.
As far as spelling?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome that they did that for you.
Yeah.
Now the thing about you, so I've tracked you. I've been around in your life off and on through your progression. And so we were talking a little bit about this before, that you don't really fit the common idea that we think about for Alcoholics Anonymous or an addict. Not that there really is one thing that addict describes, but you don't really fit that. My understanding of you is, or my impression is, more of your psychological diagnosis, and that you would go manic, but that you're also working on not being on meds for obvious reasons. And that your drug use, well, part of it wasn't, I've never understood it, thought of you as being addicted, but more like experimenting to see how you can take control of your life, of your brain. If at any point this invokes something for you to say, go ahead and cut me off.
Yeah. So you're right about that, and that's something that's commonly repeated in the circles of people who do ayahuasca and mescaline and San Pedro in ceremonies. The lesson is basically that ayahuasca or San Pedro will not cure you of your maladies, but it will teach you that you have the tools necessary to cure yourself. And I went to South America with the hopes of successfully going off my meds, my psychiatric meds. And I've had the second time in my life going off the meds was I was in Ecuador when I made the decision to throw away my meds. And a note to anybody throwing away meds: make sure you dispose of them in a responsible way. Just take them, if you can, take them to a pharmacy and let the pharmacy dispose of them. And if there's not a pharmacy that accepts them, what you can do is dissolve them in water and pour the water into cat litter. Yeah. Otherwise, they could get in the water supply and mess with the water supply. So,
which is a no-no. Don't do that.
Yeah. So that's why in Ecuador I disposed of my meds, and I lasted 4 months of being sane. I traveled between Ecuador and Peru and Chile and Mexico in those 4 months. And those 4 months culminated with me losing touch with all reality and needing the help of my father, who made an emergency trip to Mexico.
The same one?
The same trip.
Okay.
Yeah. But
that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about what's happened. I mean, because I'm already familiar with that event, I'm curious what's happened since then, the last 4 years.
Yeah, in the last 4 years, I've taken my meds as needed. So I'll go a month or so without using them, and then I'll take them. And when I was in Argentina, I went off the meds for 6 months, and those 6 months coincided with being in a relationship with an amazing woman who helped me heal myself. And for me, as long as I sleep 7 to 8 hours a night, I'm healthy. And I sleep a lot better when I have somebody next to me. So those 6 months in Argentina, I do believe a great deal of my healing was because I had somebody anchoring me and somebody to help me sleep. And even I had a foot injury in that 6 months, and my then girlfriend, she helped me sleep even when I had pain. And so recently I was able to go off my meds for 6 months, and I decided to take them again when the relationship with C ended. I'll call her C. And when the relationship with C ended, I was sleeping alone. And when I didn't even have the dogs to sleep next to anymore, that's when I went back on my meds.
So, if I could summarize, it sounds like you have discovered a lot more about your rhythms and it seems like you've become, well, for one, you've kind of, maybe there's a better way of saying it, but kind of given in to the idea that meds are helpful. Mm-hmm. I won't say necessary, because maybe for some people they aren't, but that for you they're helpful, and you're able to recognize when you need that help. Mm-hmm. and things in your life, other things in your life that help and make the meds less necessary or less needed. That's pretty cool. That's neat to see. I mean, I love that you've been on that adventure. Among your other adventures, that is kind of like an internal adventure that you've been dealing with and working with. Mm-hmm. And it's just awesome, the progress you've made and discoveries. And you stayed alive.
Yeah, I would like to say you're right. The meds for me are, today I'm taking them because I'm lazy, honestly. Like, I know there are holistic ways. There are other ways to to, I do know I have the power to hypnotize myself into sleep. It takes a level of mental strength and dedication that right now it's just easier to take the meds, and it's always easier to take the meds or take a drink or take a drug or whatever. And this is the reality I'm living with today. I know that if I go off the meds, I could navigate my natural cycle, my highs and lows. But for me, in this time of my life, I've just accepted the reality. For me right now, what's best for me is to use my meds.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and the stakes are kind of high. Mm-hmm. It seems to me like if you don't and you do the other things, mm-hmm. It's almost like walking a tightrope and one slip up and suddenly, I mean, that's just my take. Yeah. And where if you can't focus on doing all of that correctly, then yeah, that's neat. Well, mm-hmm. I applaud you for your discoveries, like I said.
Yeah. And for this segment of the podcast, we're going to leave it there. And we're going to continue this conversation in just a moment. Do you want to say anything else to the audience of Cade's Kaleidoscope podcast?
No, it's good hanging out. I hope we get to hang out again before you leave. Yeah. There's a ton more things to discuss. Yeah. But I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to hearing your next podcast.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I love what you're doing.
Thanks so much. Thanks for being here. And again, you can check out Richard's YouTube channel over on the Wild Side. Thank you so much for listening. This is Cade's Kaleidoscope, your resource for holistic health, sobriety, and travel. My name is Preston Wade. The music you heard in the beginning of this episode is called Long Road Ahead by Kevin MacLeod. And the music you're hearing in the background now is called From the Earth by Judson Crane. You can pre-order my first book by sending $15 or more. The Venmo address is at Cadespodcast. The PayPal URL is paypal.me/Cadespodcast265. And the address with Cash App is $Cadespodcast265. That's Cade's Podcast without the apostrophe 265. Please follow Cade's Kaleidoscope Podcast on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. The links are in the description. If you would like to have your content sponsored or included in this podcast, you can contact me. My email is cadespodcast265@gmail.com. And that's cadespodcast265@gmail.com without an apostrophe. Please send me an email. Let me know what you thought of this episode. That's the same email address, cadespodcast265@gmail.com. Please like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast, and leave a review. That'll help make this popular. If you like your music, poetry, or art featured on this podcast, please send that. Again, the address, cadespodcast265@gmail.com. Matiyosh means thank you in a Mayan dialect. So again, Matiyosh. I hope your day is full of wonder. Keep rotating your kaleidoscope.